Coming up on this week's show, we look back at a trip we took about a year ago now to tell you why you should be planning a little something extra for your next ride. The Polaris XCR switchback, it's up for first burn. We also have a look at the CKX Titan helmet, and the Polaris, it's in the shop bleeding its heart out. So let's send it. STV has been brought to you by Yamaha. Conquer snow with Yamaha. Ford F-Series, Canada's best-selling line of trucks for 52 years. Tough, smart, capable. Kimpex, fueled by fun. The annual sled trip is a big part of what drives us all to ride. Now that trip could be in the pursuit of a high mileage day, or a trip with the boys or the girls, or maybe just out with the family. But before we hit the road with our trucks and trailers, we have to plan our adventure. I'm just wondering though, are you taking advantage of everything there is to see and do on your next ride? Last season, STV and OSM planned a trip to Rouyn-Noranda for some riding, relaxing, and racing. First up was a stop to the CSRA's season opener in Rouyn-Noranda. Then a couple of days riding the trails of the Abitibi-Témiscamingue region of Western Quebec. And when I mean last season, we are pretty much a year to the day. In fact, if you're watching this on your television subscription, there's a good chance the CSRA racers are on the track right now in Rouyn. If you're watching on the web, well, that can happen anytime. But the point of this story is that before you make plans for your next sledding adventure, you should think about other things you can do on your vacation to take it from just another sled ride to an epic adventure. These sidebar experiences can be just about anything, from a race, as in our case with the CSRA event, or a vintage sled collection that can be either a private one or something more organized. Maybe it's a sledding resort mecca of some kind. You know, one of those places that everybody needs to get to at least once in their sledding career. Or it could even be something outside of snowmobiling, but just as cool to see. Often when we're planning one of our trips for video or print, we're looking for those extra sidebar stories that we can capture along the way. Sometimes they become part of the story we're working on, other times they become a feature of their own. But one thing is for sure, my most memorable snowmobile rides have always included one of these sidebar nuggets, and over time, they've turned into some of my best snowmobiling memories.
When you're setting up a snowmobile trip, obviously your key is to go snowmobiling, to put down big miles. And it's kind of always been that way. But what we've been doing is we're trying to take a step back and really kind of enjoy the area that we're going into and find things different over and above, say, just snowmobiling. I mean, it's great to do big miles. I mean, you can still do those trips, but also to take the time and find something like a tourist spot, point of interest, or even a snowmobile race. I mean, why not? Take the time.
I enjoy going up here, actually, north. I'm from originally Northern Ontario, Sudbury area, so going there up here is great. I like the 401 on snow, so it's big, big trails and fast rides, and I enjoy that. So I try to get one or two of those in. It's a nice change of pace. Everyone wants to race when they go trail riding, and I'm like, dude, I'm just here to enjoy the ride for once. I actually don't have to race. It's two completely different things, and really the trail's not the spot to be racing anyway. It's meant for the track, so I just enjoy the ride. I got a big high windshield and a long track, and just enjoy it. It's good.
You can find activities for everything and everybody. Family activities are easy to find. All you have to do is go to their tourism website, and there is always a list of things that you can do. Some are accessible right by snowmobile trail. So all you got to do is take a little bit of time, do some investigation, and you'll find things to do for family, for the guys. There's nightlife, there's attractions, there's all sorts of stuff you can do.
Now you might be thinking that because we're media, we get special attention. And you're right, sometimes we do, and it's nice because it can help open doors. But we also make sure that the stories we bring you are achievable. meaning they're places or activities that anybody can do. You just have to ask the right people.
They're not just there to help the media like us guys, they're there to help everybody coming into the region. The website will even have pre-planned trips, they'll have loops for you. Abitibi even has this amazing app that you can download onto your phone, and it's the full trail system with things to do, points of interest. You put that on your phone and you've got the region all to yourself. Whenever planning a trip and you bring up guides, people will typically think, well, I need a guide for the mountain, I need a guide to get me through the backcountry. But you can also find guides that'll take you through the trails. Guys that know the trails, and sometimes there's local trails that you may not catch on the big map. If you're out trying to blast down the Trans-Canada Highway, there's going to be some off local trails that maybe it'll take you into a point of interest that may not be on the map, or a photo op that you may not find that's not a marked trail. Those guys will help you find those spots for sure.
Of course, you don't always have to be planning these extras into your ride. Sometimes it's all about the ride, and that's okay too. But if you are headed to an area that you've been to countless times already, by doing something different on just one day, you can breathe life into these places that might be becoming a little stale.
Oh yeah, if you wanted to plan a race and ride weekend, all you gotta do is head over to the CSRA website, the schedule's there, pick a location, pick a race, then head over to that region's tourism board, find the things to do, and tie it all in. Trust me, you will not be disappointed.
Bottom line, if you plan in advance and use the resources available to you in the places you're headed to, I can guarantee that you can plan a trip you'll remember forever. When it comes to the 2018 Polaris XCR Switchback, you can't call it King of the Hill because that would imply this thing is an RMK, and you can't say King of the Trail because that doesn't come off the tongue at all, so I guess you just got to call it badass. Polaris brought back the XCR nameplate in 2017 and at the same time went back to the XCR's roots as a cross-country sled. Now somewhere between the first XCRs in 2017, Polaris watered down the XCR brand with powerful but somewhat lacking trail sleds that had lost sight of the XCR's cross-country racing roots. Thankfully, that era is over. In 2018, the switchback option is now available, and that means you get all the regular XCR goodies, but with a 137 by 1.35 inch track wrapped around the lengthened Pro XC rear skid frame. After the STV and OSM crews have had the chance to ride the new switchback, just about everyone agreed that the longer skid settled the XCR down just enough for mere mortals to pull all the potential out of the XCR. Now the difference between the switchback and regular 121-inch versions isn't much. It's just that the shorter track demands a bit more reaction speed on the part of the rider to keep the 121 in check. This settling is due to the longer effective wheelbase of the 137-inch track in the back. It also means the centralized mass is just a little bit longer because of the longer chassis. All this means the 121-inch version reacts just that millisecond faster. Not that it's bad, mind you, but if you're going to go full send on it, you'd better know what you're doing. Don't get me wrong on this point. Just because the switchback is easier to control, it's only by the slightest little bit. This is still a sled that Polaris has got turned up to 11, so you'd better be wearing your big boy underwear. And I'm not talking about trails that look like this, tabletop smooth and straight. There's better sleds out there than this one. For that, get yourself a couch. No, I'm talking about trails that look like this. Cross-country racing was the focus of the Wizards of Roseau when they conjured up this machine. It's even in its name, XCR, cross-country racer, so you know this thing was built for the toughest trails you can imagine. It can literally dominate the terrain and outlast the lungs of any rider who steps up to grab the throttle. The heart of this is in these things, the 4 Walker Evans shocks. Without them, the XCR couldn't be what it is. Polaris went all in with low and high-speed compression adjustment and optimized valving specific to the XCR. These shocks can virtually guarantee that as a rider, you will never experience fade and that they can be tuned into your sweet spot with the adjustable preload and high and low speed compression adjustment. Every one of the riders of STV and OSM have agreed the shock package is the reason this sled is so good. With the shocks being what they are, and that's amazing, the XCR can now hit stuff harder than it ever has before. Now that could have created a little bit of a durability issue with the chassis, but again, they've thought of that, and the XCR has been beefed up to take it. Out back, the XCR has the Pro XC skid frame that is built for the rough stuff. With active pitch control to optimize weight transfer, it also features a chrome moly rear pivot and front torque arm that saves weight and is stronger than mild steel. There's also reinforced rail beams and front arm mount, along with solid bogie wheels and the IQR rear axle. In front, leading the way are those sweet Walker Evans shocks we talked about, but also the Pro Steer skis that have been beefed up to take the pounding they're sure to see. Keeping all this trickery together is the Axis chassis and all the goodness it brings to the party. Plus, buried deep inside is the Cleanfire 800. The Axis chassis and Cleanfire components of the XCR have been around for a few years and really didn't require any modifications to meet the demands of the XCR nameplate, which is kind of a testament as to how tough they actually are. The package of the Axis chassis and Cleanfire engine has become the sought-after sled for the crew of STV and OSM over the years, and we've had a few in the fleet. Fistfights have almost broken out for who gets these sleds on weekend rides. They are that good. But I didn't want to spend a bunch of time telling you about how good they are. We all know they're pretty good. Instead, I wanted to tell you what makes the XCR, and that's the details. So here's another one. To go along with all that newfound speed you can generate with the switchback track, and given the fact that you can keep that speed up through the pounding rough stuff, and that you now have most likely driven faster and deeper into any corner than you've ever been before, you need a brake that you can depend on to slow you down. Polaris has installed their Race Technology PRT brake system into the XCR to give you that confidence heading into the corner at speed. The brake system also includes one of my favorite details of the XCR, and that's this thing right here, a ductwork that brings air from the outside through this tube right to the top of the caliper and rotor, meaning it brings that fresh air, cool air into this area that would normally be overheated, meaning your brakes are overheated, also meaning that your lever is spongy. With this system, that's never going to happen. The bigger question might be whether or not you can live up to the XCR, because otherwise, this thing, it's going to eat you for lunch. Over the last couple of years, the CKX Titan helmet has become one of the most talked about brain buckets in the snowmobiling industry. Now, part of that is because of the marketing that they're doing, but also it's just a damn good lid.
CKX was founded in 1983. It's a brand that has produced snowmobile clothing for many years. We've evolved from a puffy snowmobile jacket into a much more technical piece. We've got a full line of helmets, clothing, and accessories. Corporately, we've really evolved with the branding of CKX, and we're out to be a major competitor in the snowmobile industry. CKX brings a lot of that product passion into the lines that we carry, and we want to, kind of keep up with trends and see what's going on in the industry. And those people are at the forefront of that. They are at the racetrack. They are out riding on the weekends, and that really has brought CKX forward in the lineup of our clothing and helmets. Now, the Titan helmet was really developed off a concept of looking at the changes in the industry and seeing that the motocross style helmet had become very popular. However, no one had built a purpose-driven snowmobile helmet from that motorcycle helmet concept. And so it was brought forward to the team and said, look, here's what we're looking for. We're looking for something that is a winter product, and take the best ideas from what people are doing and turn it into a exceptional winter MX style helmet. The designer that started it all, that was put to the task, was Stefan Dion, which is fairly famous in the superbike world, but also a very avid enthusiast. And so he came forward with the team and worked on this product, and it worked exceptionally well. You can go through a lot of the features of the CKX Titan helmet, and making it shine compared to some of its competitors are the 210-degree peripheral vision of the goggle, the way that it seals up around the helmet itself in the opening. The opening muzzle allows you to talk, allows you to breathe, those type of situations. People that weren't traditionally used to pulling a helmet over their head that closes them in, the Titan allows you to give that feeling of being openness when you're getting ready to ride. A lot of those type of features have really brought forward in the snow world that MX style helmet. Well, the Titan is a technical piece, and by being a technical piece, it means that it has many configurations for different riders' styles, also different face configurations. Some people's faces are a little more round, some are a little more oblong. So what we've included in the kit is 2 different nose pieces, a neoprene nose piece for the goggles, as well as a soft rubber nose piece out of silicone, as well as a extended face curtain, as well as an extended chin curtain. So some people breathe heavier, some people breathe lighter. It allows you to get the perfect setup for what's going to work for you, as well as the configuration of the new tactical goggle. We've allowed for open and closed venting around the goggle, different weather conditions, whether you're riding up north at -40 or you're riding on a -10 day. It has the ability to configure itself for all those type of situations.
I'm just wondering, does it work with beards?
It definitely works with beards.
Oh, okay, good. Sorry. One of the most important systems on your buggy is probably one you're not thinking about too often, and that's the brake system. I mean, when was the last time you checked wear on your pads, right? You can't even remember. So if you can't remember when you did that, I would bet my lunch today that you've never looked at the brake fluid either. If you're the type of rider that never uses their brakes and relies only on engine braking to do the majority of your slowing down, you still need to be thinking about your brake system, because when you really need to stop in a hurry, you need the brakes to do it. The way I ride, I use the brakes a lot. I mean, I'll use the brakes to settle the nose down if I'm going over a trail riser. It helps get that headlight pointed back down to the ground. I'll also stab the brakes from time to time just to feel what the trail is like, so I know what traction I've got. And then going into a corner fast, like really hustling in, I'll brake hard, threshold brake into the corner, and then slowly release the brake to trail brake through the initial part of the corner. What that does is get the front end down and help it settle, and then I can transition to oversteer so I can get on the gas quicker to get out of the corner. I mean, I'm on the brakes all the time. All this can put a ton of heat into the disc and pad. Now this stuff will actually get so hot, the rotor will glow orange. And with studs in the track, you can work the brakes even harder. This time and heat not only wears out pads, but it can also take its toll on the fluid, resulting in a spongy feel on the brake lever and an ever-increasing chance of fade when the heat starts to build. On this old Polaris, well, the pad's still look in pretty good shape, and so does the rotor, so I'll probably just go ahead and scuff these up with some sandpaper before I put them back in for the final time. But the brake fluid, I've got no idea about that, so I'm just gonna go ahead and change it. You do have to watch DOT compatibility, so check your reservoir for a spec, and stick to that. There are basically two types of fluid, and the system is designed specifically for each and should not be mixed. If you need advice, the specialists at your local parts store can help, and if you can, option up to a fluid with a higher boiling point. To bleed the brakes, I'm using a small piece of clear line running into an empty water bottle to collect the old fluid. The tube will not only keep the mess to a minimum, but will also show any air bubbles trapped in the system, and you should also be able to see when the new fluid starts to come through. Okay, there's a couple of tricks to this, and number one, be really careful when you crack this bleeder loose because these things, they can break off really easy. Another one, never let the reservoir up on the handlebar run out of fluid, because if you do, it lets air in, but you have to bleed all the way out through the system. To push the fluid through, squeeze the brake lever to put a bit of pressure in the system. Then open the bleeder to let that fluid out of the system. Then close the bleeder again before you release the brake lever. Keep repeating this until you see new fluid start to come through the line. It should start to look cleaner than the old nasty stuff. Some people believe that the brakes, they just slow them down. But I believe that a properly functioning brake system, one that you can trust, will actually make you faster. That feels better. Perfect. Hey, thanks for hanging with us this week on STV. Until next week, I'm going to leave you with the immortal words of Larry Enticer, hold her wide.
That was my perfect take. It really was.
Yeah, he's facing us.
Want to do this again?